And then we've been doing this in a way that will ensure that our SMEs are competitive. As we indicated in the last seminar that we held, this project was born out of a collaboration between Ghana Enterprises Agency, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and the government of Japan. The numerous challenges that face our SMEs in order to be competitive beyond the borders of Ghana. And we'll be implementing this project since last year up to now. So today's seminar is one of the numerous seminars we'll be implementing in order to address the challenges that you SMEs face, and we know that some of the challenges are very daunting, and then we'll help to actually address that. We did indicate in our last seminar that SMEs really face a lot of daunting tasks. You face numerous challenges that you are able to sometimes withstand, and other times you are unable. And we all know the ability of every SME to be able to withstand any challenge, any threat, is your ability to adapt to the changing economic and global environment. And to us, is very, very, very critical. And it all stems from how well you are efficient, how well you are efficiently managing your businesses. And to us, we indicated that in the world of SMEs, several of these forces present opportunities and at the same time present a lot of obstacles. So your ability to tap these opportunities in the world of SME depend on how you are able to determine or change direction in order to fit into the changing global economic environment. So your ability to align and change, it can only be done when you are efficiently managing your business corporations very well in order to actually address the major forces that affects the growth and development of SMEs. And I indicated those major forces are technology, market, finance, global business ecosystem, national policies, and regulatory framework. They all actually contribute in shaping your directions. And to us, the most critical one is the management, factory floor operations. That is the beginning. So how well you are able to manage your factory operations will determine whether you'll be able to adjust, to be resilient, to align to the new changing world economic order. So one of such interventions we indicated in our last seminar is 5S. Today, we want to take you through another challenge, another menu that will enable you to be able to identify the major causes of inefficiencies. Yes, we all know that every business wants to optimize profit, want to make profit, but how do you make profit? You make profit when you are able to actually sell, when you are able to actually produce. But if you're not able to produce, you can't profit. So the most important thing that affects your ability to make profit is what we identify as waste. And in most cases, our waste definition is most of the time different from what a typical waste that actually affects you people at the factory place. And very soon, we'll take our time and take you through all the waste that is applicable at the factory floor operations, so that you open your eyes wide, identify those waste, and find ways of addressing them. So today, we are taking you through what referred to as the 7 wastes. So these 7 wastes are typically inefficiencies that is happening at every floor, every factory, every business is actually happening. And for us, our ability to be able to identify this and then address them will be critical to our competitiveness. So take you through what the waste is all about, the types of waste that we have, the causes and countermeasures, and how to go about identifying or the how to be able to identify this waste at your factory. So what is MUDA, or what is waste? Typically, manufacturing setup in every business, to be able to be efficient means that all workers are working up to their optimum levels. And once workers are working up to the minimum level, they are able to work in such a way that all activities that is adding value to their operations are dealt with, and all activities that are not adding value to their operation are eliminated completely, if not completely, reduced drastically. In other words, waste is a non-value added activity. In our business operations, what are activities that are not adding value to your business operation or to the purpose of your task? So your ability to identify what is not adding value to your description, to your work, is very important, and that is the beginning of your efficiency. So we try to identify all unwanted or materials left over at the production floor, and then get a market value for those. You see the extent to which waste can contribute to your competitiveness. So today, we are presenting to you, submitting to you today that waste is the most critical concern of every manufacturing setup, every business setup. The eyes to see this waste is important for your competitiveness. And the 7 of them we'd like to take you through. What are these 7 types of waste? As I indicated earlier, to be competitive in every business setup, you have to be efficient. Efficient in your resource utilization. And you can only do that when you're able to pay attention on these important 7 aspects of your production setup. 1 is overproduction. 2 is waste of waiting, waste in transportation, waste in processing, waste of inventory, waste of motion, and defects. This I know and I believe that these words or terminologies are not new, but you may appreciate how this waste contributes significantly to the cost buildup, contribute significantly to the inefficient operations of our business, contribute significantly to our competitiveness. So I will start from the first one, which is overproduction. We took you through the concept of Kaizen in the last seminar, and we said Kaizen is all about interventions that aims at improving the status quo continuously. So in intervention that is otherwise contributing negatively to your continuous growth and development is anti-Kaizen. And how do you identify that? You can identify that when your actions and inactions is costing you financially, it's making you lose money. And one of the ways where your cash, your inflow gets out of your business is your production management. And here we're referring to overproduction. So when you overproduce, and here we're referring to producing in excess of what the market requires, producing in excess of what of demand, and your working capital will actually be locked up. If you're not fortunate and you have loans that you use in procuring the raw materials, it implies that your debts, your principal and interest payment will actually be accumulated and putting a lot of stress on businesses. So one major waste which Kaizen stresses is overproduction. So we discourage producing what market requires, that is producing in excess of need or demand, but producing just what the market wants, what the market demands, producing to meet exactly the requirements of the market forces. And in most cases, it's very difficult to determine how you get yourself into the situation of overproduction. And it is clear that there are some situations where some other machines produce in large volumes. They can produce in smaller volumes. The machine has a specific quantity. So if you want to produce more, you have to produce up to that quantity because of the setup of that business. And there are also instances where
People, we can't hear you. It seems you are off.
Linda, are you able to hear?
So let me.
Yeah, people has gone off now.
Can you hear? Okay. You can see now.
Yes. It's back now.
All right, thank you. Apologies, we've just lost connection. So I'll go over the causes of the overproduction. I said one major cause is large lot production as a result of the setup of the machines. And there are some machines that will require a certain quantity to be able to produce. So without that quantity, the machine cannot operate. So if you require less setup, if you require some setup, it means that you need to have a smaller lot in order to be able to produce. And there are some instances where businesses also anticipate that market is going to be good, they overproject and overproduce to meet that projection, and only to realize that market is not actually growing to meet their projection, and therefore there will be excess demand. Sometimes you have poor communication from customers that leads to overproduction, And then sometimes you just decide that, no, let me just produce to just have more stocks just in case, then you'll be able to meet your demand. These are the possible causes of overproduction. And remember, the more you keep goods that you produce and that are not actually selling, though it's a current asset to you, but it's a capital locked up. And that will have consequences in terms of your working capital management. So how do you address these issues? These issues, one is to change your production method, changing from large lot production to small lot production, or your ability to have a shorter changeover. So some companies should be able to at least within the shortest possible time, you should have the means and the expertise to change over in order to produce. You produce according to your customer schedule. You improve communication between company, suppliers, and customers. And then in most cases, you have to standardize your procedures. Remember, you don't allow room for your employees to actually interpret. The interpretation should be clear to every employee so that instructions are clear so that nobody will interpret and give wrong interpretation to just instructions. And then your clear production planning and control is equally very, very, very important. The second waste, which to me is very rampant, is commonly seen when you step into every factory, is a waste of waiting. This muda here is a Japanese word, means waste. The waste of waiting or the muda of waiting occurs when hands of an operator or workers are idle at the factory. And when you enter any business, any factory setup, you see workers paid for some number of hours, and yet they are waiting for a task to perform, not because they are not willing to work, but because they are waiting for that task to come to them. So this, when you calculate the effect, the cumulative effect to the business over a period of time in monetary value is always huge, but we always overlook this. But this is very, very important. So the cumulative effects of idle hands, time that should have been used in working, but used in actually waiting for one person to finish operating before they can also do, or because machine is faulty, the cumulative effect on businesses in Ghana is very huge. And the cost makes most of our companies uncompetitive. And what are the causes? The causes include unbalanced process, faulty machine, shortage of raw materials, lack of information, either through unclear instructions or misinformation. And I know you all know this. So when the line production is not well balanced, some tasks, some workers in line are actually having a lot of tasks, while others are not having, or some machines are placed in certain positions that are not all that efficient, and therefore you have a lot of work piled up on that machine. Either the machine is not efficient or the worker is not efficient. It affects the preceding task or the performance of the preceding task. The employee will not be efficiently or optimally utilized because the flow will not be that smooth to ensure that there's proportionate allocation of task and time. So the fellow will be paid for little work being done because most of the time will actually be idle. And then faulty machines can also happen. Very common in Ghana. You go, the slice out and people are waiting. Machine is done, people are waiting. Raw material is finished, people are waiting. if there's no information to how to produce this quantity, and then people are taking their own decisions, or there's misinformation. These are all contributing. They are minor that we don't actually take much attention or place much emphasis on, but contributes greatly to the overall cost and competitiveness of our businesses. How do we address them? Addressing them, number one, is the line balancing. And the line balancing is one of the major menus in the future we'll be taking you through. It's a very big, broad, and how to actually ensure that your line is balanced. All workers are allocated proportionate time and task, and they're performing up to their optimum levels, ensuring that every minute that he or she is required to do something, the fellow is actually engaged. No time is actually idle for waiting any task to be performed. What we should also pay attention is preventive machine maintenance. And this is a common menu or intervention that we are actually introducing. How do you ensure that your machines are always in order? A checklist that ensures that every day you know the condition of the machine through the use of 5S, through the use of machine maintenance checklists, through planned maintenance. So there are a lot of other measures. When we get to your factory, we'll be able to help you to put those processes, those interventions in place that will ensure that your machines are always able to produce 24 hours. And even if there's a problem at all, you are able to determine that ahead of time and plan accordingly. So another countermeasure is to determine alternative tasks while blackout. So, and that is what I've just said. If you know this particular machine will not be in operation around this hour, you are able to efficiently utilize your workers to actually engage in other activities you would have been able to use other workers to do and pay them. So, for instance, the factory has lights out and the whole place is dirty. Why should they wait when it is time for, when you are paying for that? They can actually engage in other activities that will make the company very clean and then a neat and safe working environment through the use of 5S, which I explained last time. Another measure is inventory control, and on which I'll be taking you detailed in in my next slides. The next countermeasure, which is very, very, very important, is standard operating procedures. So to be able to avoid this and to allow employees to be able to work efficiently, each worker, each factory hand should be able to determine what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and whether it's been done well. And the fellow should be able to do that by himself. And those and the steps that is involved in the performance of that should be clearly explained and displayed and well known by everybody. So this will limit mistakes and ensure that they are able to perform up to optimal level. And other is the production control board or the visualization, which will display everybody's targets when you are not meeting your targets, or when you are over meeting, or when you're overproducing. Your targets will be very clear to you so that you don't go beyond your targets. The third waste, which I want to draw or actually submit to you, is the waste of transportation. You may ask yourself, do we have waste of transportation too? Yes. The movement of goods, the movement of parts, the movement of processes, the movement of finished goods to and fro in the factory is very important in determining the efficiency of that worker or that process. So how long you move will also determine your level of efficiency. The lesser you move with the same number of quantity or output you produce, the more the efficiency. And the more you move to actually carry the same quantity of goods and services or parts, will also determine your level of inefficiency. So if you move a shorter distance to transport large volumes of goods and services, it's far better than going through long distance or transporting goods using pathways or because it will lead you to a minimum output at the end of the day. So we always recommend that in a factory setup, you watch how to transport your goods. What is the distance in between the working process? Can something be done about it? So, and the picture that you've seen just clearly shows, so the more distance you work in transporting your goods, using your human effort, the more inefficient that process will become, or that task will become. And the shorter it is with an activation index, the more efficient it becomes. So with the waste of transportation, all what we are saying is movement of goods and services within your factory using shorter distance is the best way to improve your efficiency and reduce your waste. And this is a typical example in one of the companies. An employee with the two hands carrying things to come and put inside this aboboya. And there's one that will just carry it once with using this forklift or using the conveyor. He can move once to come and fill it, but this person will move severally. So the number of time he will move, look at the time, the health concern, the concentration, the accident that can happen, that can affect the quality of the product. So mode of transportation or waste of transportation, when properly assessed using scientific methods, contribute greatly to the competitiveness or to the efficiency of every business operation. So the third point, the fourth point I want to raise is a model of processing, or what we refer to as the waste of processing. You know that in some of our production processes, it requires that employees meet certain specific specifications. And sometimes, because we want to be very competitive in the market space, we want to enhance to exceed the expectation of our customer by adding some other designs, adding some other values, improving packaging that are not necessary, but they are not part of the cost buildup, but you want to impress. So your impressing will lead to cost, but it doesn't add value to the customer specification. In Kaizen, we are saying that anything that is not part of your customer specification, and then which will require an extra work to be done, require time to actually do that, you should try to eliminate it. If it's part of the design and part of the standards or the specification, that is fine. Otherwise, you try to eliminate that. So overprocessing here refers to overdoing what is required, adding additional specs, task. Meanwhile, it's not part of your customer requirement or specification. What are the causes of this? Unclear standards and specifications, and then non-standardized working practice. And it is clear There are instances in the field of fashion apparel sector. If your standard operating procedures are not clear, if your customer specifications are not clear, and you leave room for your employees to determine their own standards based on their own experience, they will add extra features to the specs that are not required. But those extra features will require materials in order to perform that. And the extra material is cost, which is not actually factored during your customer specification requirement. So the best approach in addressing that is, one, to standardize your operation procedures, clear instructions to be given. You eliminate all unnecessary processes. So in additional feature task that is not part of the customer requirement, take it out. And also to provide training, regular periodic training to your employees to enhance their capacity to be able to appreciate what they are doing. And you should be able to also ensure that your workers are able to employ or introduce one of these Kaizen most important methodologies or interventions, and that is ECRS. You eliminate, combine, rearrange, and simplify. How do they brainstorm to identify a task that is not necessary? And then how can they eliminate that task? Or how can they realize that a particular task can be combined with one task for one person to do? How can they rearrange the process to make operations more simpler? Or is there a best way to simplify the whole operations with the introduction of a machine or modification of a machine or modification of the whole design? So the ability to train workers to brainstorm and to be able to come out with their own ideas in addressing this is very important, and every company should be able to do that. Kaizen says inventory is a waste, and that is the fifth point, the fifth waste in every factory setup. In Ghana, people disagree, not only in Ghana, but in most African countries. But we still believe and then hold on to our conviction that inventory is actually waste. And I'll explain that. Inventory is necessary for production. Without inventory, you can't produce. Inventory means your materials, your work in process, and also your finished goods. So without it, you cannot produce. When we say waste of inventory or model of inventory, we are just referring to inventory that is in excess of what is required within the company. Buying materials more than what is required for operation at a given point in time. Producing goods and services, and then having a lot of work in process goods pile up, waiting to be completed. Doing that more than what is required for that day or for that particular production batch. Or producing a lot of goods more than what you actually plan. So our emphasis here is extra goods in anticipation of increase in demand can result in waste of accumulation. So how do you conclude that inventory is actually waste? And that is what I'm about to explain. So when you use your money to actually buy a lot of goods, a lot of materials producing throughout the year, and in the market slumps, what happens? Your working capital is locked up, and sometimes you struggle to take care of your operational expenses, administrative costs. When you take loan to do that, your money is actually locked up. And when you start and then there's a lot of work in process, and you are not able to complete it a day, and your machine gets spoiled on the way, you have a lot of work in process piled up waiting to be completed. So when you have a lot of extra goods pile up as a result of your own anticipation of demand increasing, it will lead to you having your working capital locked up in the form of inventory. And if you look at your financial reports, your financial statements, it should be clear that some of you will appreciate this. You see your inventory, the contribution of your inventory to the total asset very high, but meanwhile, this money is not in your hand. And then there's no market you can sell these goods. And who claim that it's an asset which cannot easily be converted into cash or cash and cash equivalents. So overproduction, poor layout, and unbalanced product flow causes this to happen. And normally, this is what we normally see when we visit enterprises. So sometimes you get poor layout where a machine will have to operate for one day, and then to produce a particular task or to perform a particular task, the next task will have to be done the following day. The next task will have to be done the previous day. Or a particular machine can do up to 40 tons of one product, but the next one can do only up to 10 tons. So one machine is producing a lot of work in process, but the preceding machine or the machine following can only do just a quarter of that. So you see a lot of work in process actually pile up. And sometimes the quality of this is actually compromised depending on the environmental conditions. So we say, how do we address that? We say, order what is needed for a specific period. Just in time production. What is required at a particular point in time, you do. And then when the market adjusts, you adjust accordingly. In that way, you are able to manage your working capital very well. This is not a straitjacket approach. Circumstances may change, and we should be able to adjust when circumstances change. And we're able to come and support when the circumstances change. That requires that sometimes you need stock in order to be able to be competitive. One other way to be able to do that is to visualize your materials, and that's what we call inventory control. What is a minimum stock? What is your order level? So you should be able to have that very well. That will inform your supply chain management plan. So, and once we're able to have that, your inventory control measures at the material section, at the work in process section, and at the finished goods section, you are able to avoid manufacturing products in excess of what the customer requires or what market demands. So one of the waste, which is very, very important, and to me, one of the most critical aspects we need to pay attention to is the mode of motion. Remember that the optimum performance of a task depends on how the worker conveniently can easily perform that task with speed and accuracy. And to be able to do that, it means the worker should be able to have easy movement of the body parts. So the ease of moving the body parts in the performance of your task determines how fast or slow a worker is. And that is the human engineering in the performance of tasks is what's referred to as the ways of motion. So if the movement of parts in the performance of your task is very difficult, is very uneasy, you struggle to hold goods, you struggle to pick your parts, you struggle to transport your goods, you struggle to arrange your goods, you stretch to pick goods and services, it actually inhibits your speed and accuracy in terms of your performance. So the model of motion is saying that you lose a lot of time in the performance of your tasks when you are not comfortable, when it is difficult for you to actually pick materials, bend down, move your body parts to actually perform that task. So the best way possible is in the movement of your body parts, or what is called the human engineering. You try as much as possible to limit your work area in a way that makes it easier for you to get hold of your goods and services, turn and pick your parts, bend down. Any movement of your body part should be in a position that makes you more comfortable and then easy to reach anything you want to do. And the causes are what we refer to poor layout of your factory or your machine layout is one factor. Isolated operation, shared tools, the congestion at the work area. So sometimes tools are on the ground, somebody have taken tools to one place, the tools are placed at a higher level, goods are placed at a higher level, the goods are placed on the ground, you have to bend, squat. So how things are placed will determine how your body will react or move in order to perform that task. So the human engineering is very important to be able to address this. And how do you do that? You can do that by disposing of your obsolete material to save space and avoid confusion. We need a very conducive work environment as employees, workers, human beings to be able to work and work efficiently. So if your workplace is very congested, what do we do? All unnecessary things that is not needed, take them out to avoid confusion of picking one thing and putting it there and then looking for the right tool to take and perform that task. You should also visualize all the raw material and inventory. Here, inventory management is also very important. And do the manufacture product in excess of the customer's requirement, which I explained earlier. And also remember that you need to innovate, take initiative to innovate and get jigs and get tools and position yourself in a way that will make work or the performance of your work more easier. I'll show you one example. An example is this this woman in that. So you see how she's actually to pick these parts. So and look at the next picture or the next photo. So the worker just turn and unpick that material. So in terms of speed, that worker will be faster than the first worker or the first picture. And the fellow will be able to sew more materials in a day than the first worker. And then the first worker will be more tired than even the second cooperator. So, and that is what referred to as the model of motion. So she has to turn to pick. So the turning will actually take time because it is quite uncomfortable. And once your work job description or the performance of your work requires movement, moving your body that makes you a bit uncomfortable, you become tired early, you make more mistakes. and you may not be able to get your own outputs. So another one waste is the waste of defects or the rejects, and which is very common and very good to produce to meet the spec. And then sometimes it's very common. And then what sometimes incorrect faults, sometimes the materials are defective, it's very difficult to work with. Sometimes your workers are inexperienced. Sometimes you don't have quality control. And how are we able to address that? You review your design, you use quality material, you introduce pre-operation machines, you train employees so that they are able to understand what the process very well, operations, and you also introduce what you call fail-proof in such a way that it is difficult to actually make a mistake, and you introduce inspection all over. And in other words, no defects. You create no defects, and then you pass no defects, and that is the overall when it comes to controlling defects in your company. And these are all the waste that we are referring to. The waste of transportation, waste of transportation, inventory, defects, overproduction, over processing, and then waste of motion, So, and then just to recap, we said for transportation, transport distances are not good because it takes time, and that is money that is being lost. And then the best way is to shorten it. So also your goods should actually be placed closer. Goods have to be put down in a way that makes this movement very easy. When it comes to inventory, we said your working process should be in such a way that allows smooth production flow. So no piling of working process, no piling of materials or parts. So because it will have an effect on the quality, because as they are kept in your warehouse for a very long time, the quality also deteriorates. We made mention of defects, and defects has to do with you not meeting your quality specifications. And once you are not doing that, you have to rework on such products. And the time used in working for such a product is money which you have to also pay. And that all accounts your competitiveness. We talk about overproduction, and which is clear to almost all of you because you are in that field. And overprocessing, which some might not get clearly, but is very important to ensure that features, adding extra features not part of requirement, is a necessary cost that must be eliminated. And then the most important and critical one is the waste of motion, the human engineering, the body parts. How do you position your body? If you bend, if you stretch, how do you position your materials, your machine in such a way that enhances efficient and optimum utilization of human performance? So these are the 7 wastes